first time that I actually got to physically see Srila Prabhupada was in Los Angeles in 1969. And I had been picking lemons to get money to go to a Zen Buddhist monastery to be a monk outside Santa Barbara, California. And I saw a poster about coming to see a real spiritual master. So I went to the Santa Barbara temple. It was a very small temple right by the ocean. There was no one there, but by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, as soon as I walked in the temple, I immediately knew that this is what I had been searching for and praying for a long, long time. So I got a ride to go see Srila Prabhupada in Los Angeles temple. It was on a Sunday. And there was an initiation going on. And what stands out in my recollection of Srila Prabhupada, that it was certainly a somber and grave occasion, and Srila Prabhupada was displaying that. But yet also, I could see there was just so much love and compassion that was emanating from Srila Prabhupada when he was initiating people. And you could see this spiritual bond forming, and immediately I thought, well, I want this. And I remember Srila Prabhupada, one person who would come up to get their beads, and Srila Prabhupada asked them to repeat the 4 regulated principles, as he always does. And as they said, no intoxication, Srila Prabhupada laughed, and he said, and this means no more LSD? And of course, I could also relate to that at the time, though I'd given up drugs. So that really struck me about Srila Prabhupada at that time, that there was such an intimate mood of spiritual love that was being reciprocated in Srila Prabhupada. You could see he was like a universal father sitting on the Vyasa-san. So that was my first physical contact with Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, of course, you know, Prabhupada was naming everyone and explaining the name. And then I came last, and he said, Lenny? And then Srila Prabhupada started laughing. And he said, oh, you have such a nice name. And then he said, your name is Narada Muni. And in those days, in the early days, Narada Muni was, I think, more prominent than he is now, because he was a transcendental spaceman, and I think we were so spaced out that everyone related with Narada Muni. So he was very popular amongst the devotees, and everyone really was waiting, who's going to get the name Narada Muni? No one had gotten that name yet. And Srila Prabhupada also found it humorous, probably, that he gave that name to me. But when he said Narada Muni, everybody was oohing and eyeing and laughing, and Srila Prabhupada was laughing. This tape is there. It's the 10 offenses tape. Srila Prabhupada so nicely explains the 10 offenses. And he says some very profound things about initiation, too. He explains, you know, the offense of thinking that chanting Hare Krishna is like mundane religion. And Srila Prabhupada explains how you can get material benefit by mundane religion. But Krishna consciousness is beyond all religion. And Srila Prabhupada said, it's like from this ceremony, you can go back to Godhead. So that's the importance of getting connected with Srila Prabhupada. And then Srila Prabhupada said, after he gave me my name, and he laughed, and he said, so Narada Muni travels all throughout space. He said, so you should do like this, and with chanting Hare Krishna and your veena, you can do. Now that's on tape. I don't know what Srila Prabhupada meant, but so Srila Prabhupada always had such a transcendental vision of all of us, you know, seeing something that we can't see in ourselves. And that's what's so beautiful about Srila Prabhupada. He could bring that out in all of us, you know, our spiritual essence. Another evening I was reading to Srila Prabhupada the pastime of Pralambasura with Lord Balaram. And Srila Prabhupada was really enjoying that. And then we got to the point where Pralambasura was being pummeled by Lord Balaram. And Srila Prabhupada, you know, began laughing, and he exclaimed very boldly, he said, this is God. And then he told how when he was a child, he used to enact this pastime with his sister. And he said, and I would play Balaram. And then he laughed and laughed about that. So that was very sweet. In San Francisco, Rath Yatra in the early days, one Rath Yatra that I was at, and I was helping to cook for that Rath Yatra with Gauri Prabhu. And so after the Rath Yatra, we went to the Family Dog Auditorium where the activities were being held simultaneously there and on the beach. And that was very wonderful. There's a very famous quote of Srila Prabhupada, and I was fortunate enough to be there for that. There were literally hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands. It was a big auditorium, you know, hippies that were in the auditorium. Vishnu Jan Maharaj was leading the kirtan. Just, you know, chant, chant, and when you're tired, take prashadam and chant more and more and more. Intense chanting, and everyone was like dressed in their full regalia. I mean, it was an incredible scene. Everybody was like fully dressed in all kinds of different hippie things and dressed like Krishna and all kinds of things. And in the middle of all this, Srila Prabhupada came walking through the whole crowd, you know, just like a swan, you know, untouched by the material energy and anything that's going around him. And Prabhupada walked through, and he went up to the stage, and he spoke, and he declared, "I have come to make the hippies happies." And it was just the perfect thing to say. Only Srila Prabhupada could say something so profound, you know. And so that was very wonderful. At another Rath Yatra, maybe it was 1971, I was manning a cart, a book cart, because at the time I was a book distributor, and we had a couple of carts, and we were selling books, and I just remembered, you know, at one point asking someone just to man it for a minute, and I ran up to go see Srila Prabhupada on the cart before it took off, and you could feel Srila Prabhupada looked at me, you know, and everybody was probably feeling the same thing. But, you know, I know Srila Prabhupada looked at me and he gave me some acknowledgement and he smiled, and it made me feel so wonderful. And then after, I remember going to where he was staying in the apartment, and Srila Prabhupada was getting a massage, and we came in and we gave Srila Prabhupada the reports on how many books were sold, and we came in with these big bags of Lakshmi collected, and Srila Prabhupada was, "Oh, very, very nice, thank you so much." So, you know, Srila Prabhupada had nothing to thank us for. We had everything to thank Srila Prabhupada for, but he was always thanking us. It's like I was mentioning that Arti, he was saying, you know, I have no service to offer, so I just thank you for allowing me to serve my Guru Maharaj. Like that. I remember in New Vrindavan, one time we were having a darshan with Srila Prabhupada in the house he was staying, and some letters had just come in from different parts of the world, glorifying Srila Prabhupada for, you know, his books and, you know, coming in from different educators and scholars. And there was this one letter in particular that Srila Prabhupada really liked, and he had somebody read it. And this letter, I don't remember who it was from, but it was from a big, big man, you know, big, big scholar. I think maybe it was someone in, you know, in one of the big mats down, you know, in South India. I'm not sure. I think maybe it was the Madhva Mat, and the Acharya of that Mat. And they was reading it, and this Acharya was saying how these books that Srila Prabhupada has written, how they could not possibly be written. You know, they're so profound, and Srila Prabhupada is so prolific. How someone could do this, being an ordinary soul, is not possible. And this person said, "It is my belief that Srila Prabhupada is Vyasadeva himself." And Srila Prabhupada just lit up with a big smile, and everyone, "Jai Prabhupada, Jai Srila Prabhupada." So, you know, we really don't know. We really don't know who Srila Prabhupada is. And what he accomplished, no one even came near accomplishing previously, and it's unlikely that for a long time anyone will. Srila Prabhupada was directly, as we know, sent by Krishna, and he came to the most, you know, fallen place, and only Srila Prabhupada was empowered with that direct potency of Krishna. I mean, Prabhupada once said Krishna asked him to come to the material world. "Will you come? Will you go, please, and deliver them?" You know. So Srila Prabhupada, though he didn't want to leave, of course he came out of his great compassion. And we saw that. Prabhupada was in Vrindavan, he didn't want to leave. But he came. he came. So in this lecture, Srila Prabhupada also told, at least it was the first time we had heard it, the story of Dhruva Maharaj. And Srila Prabhupada was explaining how, because of Dhruva Maharaj's strong determination, his Dhridabrata, his vow, that he would, realize God, and that he was so determined, nothing could shake him from that faith. And therefore he did. He saw God personally. And Prabhupada said, right there, he said, and similarly, you can also see God in 6 months' time. If you simply become this sincere and determined. And Srila Prabhupada explained how it is sincerity, that is the qualification for realizing Krishna fully. I remember one time in San Francisco, this is a famous pastime with Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was being interviewed by a reporter, and the reporter kept asking Srila Prabhupada, when did you realize God? And Srila Prabhupada would explain in more general terms, because Srila Prabhupada always would try to defer attention from him. He always wanted to glorify Krishna and glorify his spiritual master. But this guy was very persistent. And he kept, but Swamiji, I want to know when you did. Prabhupada would explain to him how you can also, and by chanting Hare Krishna, you can realize. So then he kept, no, but what year? How old were you when you first actually realized God? And Srila Prabhupada said, when I was 5 years old. And of course, Srila Prabhupada talks about that in the Bhagavatam. Also, when he talks about some of his pastimes when he was just 5 years old, and he talks about Maharaj Parikshit, and a person who exhibits these kind of pastimes, that's a symptom of being God conscious as a child. So Srila Prabhupada has always been God conscious. And he came into this world God conscious. He left this world God conscious, and he's undoubtedly now giving God consciousness to others on another planet. And hopefully we all can be with him eternally and somehow serve him in his mission.